Hi and welcome to my channel. Today I wanted to talk about one of my solo projects called Urkraft. It's been about a week since the release of the album Lyset i mørket, and I wanted to talk a little bit about that. Before we start, I should mention that I'm not classically trained, but I know basic music theory and how to use it, but I might not be able to explain everything accurately or correctly. That being said, let's jump into it. If you wondered why the intro is the way it is, it's because it's a continuation of the last album, and I even reused some of the recordings for that. And moving on to the first riff, though it might not sound like it, actually there's only two chords playing, but they are played in different positions, so it sounds like they change, and this is how that sounds like. And if I didn't do it like that, it would sound like this. As you can see, it sounds quite different. And then I just had two chords overlaying, and these sound like this. And finally, a simple tremolo pattern. Though it's not interesting in itself, the implication of it is because I use this pattern to guide me and use it as a limitation on myself to write the next riff. And I wanted it to open up a bit, so I added a lead guitar, and that goes like this. And for the other guitars, all I had to do was to change the picking pattern, and I wanted it to resolve in B, so that was just one fret change. So yeah, and this is how it sounds like together. And then I want to talk about the clean guitar in the next riff. And here I implement an open G string to serve as both the minor third for the E minor and the major second for the F minor. And it's kind of tricky because you have to alternate the picking between the chords. But anyway, here's how that is done. This song is pretty much centered around a syncopated rhythm pattern, and the pattern repeats over and over again throughout the song. And also here I implement a lot of open strings to create tension in the music and color in the music. And in the second riff it creates this kind of chaotic feel, and especially now that I haven't played the guitar in a while, it sounds even more chaotic in the recordings I'm going to show you now. So of course, if I was recording today, I mean an album, I would of course have practiced much more, but I'm kind of lazy, and recently I mainly play synthesizer, so there's that. And speaking of open strings, I have another riff that implements that. And my question to you is, can you tell the time signature? Some may hear 4/4 and some may hear 3/4, but it's actually a mix of both. It's written on a 3/4 grid, and the lead guitar and the bass are played in 3/4, and the rhythm guitar and the drums played in 4/4. I like to blend in progressive elements like polyrhythms with emphasis on blend, because I see no point in using progressive elements just because they are progressive. I want to make a good song, not an impressive song from a musician's standpoint. So, moving on. I chose the name Vindafjord for this song because the field recording was done in western Norway in a place called Vindafjord. And Vindafjord also means windy fjord, and I did recordings by the docks while the wind was blowing. There were these metal railings at the docks, and they were hollow, so the wind blew through it and it made the pipes sing. So I decided to record that, and I thought maybe it could be used for something someday, and it was. Aside from that, I added some synth that mimics the theme in the song coming after this. And then I used a backwards piano note to make a clean transition. This song was heavily inspired by Ennio Morricone, which is the guy that composed all the famous spaghetti western soundtracks. He really has a way of creating feeling that I like, so I wanted to create something similar. This is a song that's quite simple in structure and quite short, and in this case it left room to experiment. So I did a lot of experimentation with vocals, percussion, and melodica. It might not be the song you expected to hear when you started to listen to this album, and it might have been a little bit risky to include it, but I think the album would have suffered if I had removed it, so I just included it. This is also perhaps a bit risky song, and I might be pushing my luck here, considering that it follows a quite slow song and the intro is quite lengthy and almost jazzy. But when the distorted guitars kick in, it's really forceful and hits you hard. So I think it's well worth the wait. Initially, I wasn't sure what to do with the vocals. I usually write the instrument parts first, and then I write lyrics before doing the vocals. And I couldn't find any intuitive placement for any scream vocals on the main section, the main riff. I felt it was too fleeting, so I needed something else. So I landed instead on using a lot of clean vocals and having several voicings, and so I did that, and I must say I'm really satisfied with the result. along with the instruments, it creates this kind of wall of sound, and yeah, I really like it. So yeah, I am pleased with that. Also in this song, I use a lot of open strings, and I become particularly fond of the E flat major chord when you play a power chord, and then you have the open G string acting as the major third, and you have the B string acting as a minor sixth, I believe, which add tension and dissonance and can sound really cool and mystical. And here's how that sounds like. And distorted. Another thing I would like to mention is the solo, because there's actually two solos playing at once, and they are quite similar to each other but also slightly different, and one is played in the left speaker and the other in the right, and this creates this feeling that you almost feel you sink into the music, you lose your foothold, and is an effect I really like to make and I really enjoy to listen to myself. I don't have to say that much about this one, but I say a little bit. This song or piece was inspired by an acid trip I had, and I wanted it to reflect on the cacophony of that trip. And I did that by, I had a field recording, as I mentioned earlier, and I added 3 really dark, raspy vocals, and I timed them all differently so it would be kind of chaotic. And 2 of them are entirely in either left or right speaker, and the third is center, and hence its name, cacophony. This is perhaps the song I'm most satisfied with overall. It starts off with a wall of sound, and I'm going to demonstrate a little bit what I did. First I play 2 chords, E minor and F minor, from the 7th and 8th fret on the 7th string, starting from the 7th string, and I have the in combination with an open G string, and this is how that sounds like. And for the other guitar, here's where the distinction between lead and rhythm guitar evaporate, because it could be both rhythm and lead guitar, because you have the low E, and then you have the F sharp, and then the B and open G string, and the B on top that bends towards G. So it's a quite broad span of both low and high notes, But for the second part, I couldn't rely on open strings in the same way, so I decided to instead play the F minor from the 7th string and just use the remaining open strings to create dissonance. So I did that, and here's how that sounds like. And then I had the bass and kind of did the opposite. I played low notes the first half, and I went up the neck on the second part and played high notes. And this is how that sounds like. I could go on forever, but I think I'll end it here. If you're curious about the ping, that's from a microwave oven. Aside from that, I added some synth. This is a song that's quite simpler. And besides, roll on. But I think it's worth. Good.